before I go ahead and put the car on jacks, I'm actually going to show you everything we have here to do this install. So obviously the first thing you're going to need for this install is this puppy right here. So this is the GT1752 by Garrett. This is the +1 upgrade for this car. So it's the same exact size turbo, same housing as the old turbo, but they changed the wastegate, they upgrade all the internals, and then if you notice on the stock turbo, which I know a bunch of people actually get them, is the diverter valve. That port for the diverter valve is gone. They replaced it with just a bung. And when you get this turbo, don't think that you don't need to get or that your diverter valve will fit right on. You actually do have to get another part. You actually do have to get another part, and that's going to be this right here. So this is also by ATP. It's sold on their website. I'll be sure to link everything you're gonna need in the description. But this is a diverter valve relocation kit. So you connect your new diverter valve to here, and then from the bung it goes into the turbo one by a hose. Also, unless you're venting to atmosphere or you have a different blow-off valve, you're gonna need to plug this hole right here. There's gonna be a threaded hole on the bottom, and it's kind of hard to find something that'll thread in there to block it off or to make a new hose coming off of it. So I went and had it filled by Apocalypse, a shop near me, and that allows me to just go ahead and put this on and then route it to the turbo so I can use my electric diverter valve the way it's supposed to be. And then with all that, you're also going to need to upgrade your coil packs. With the phase 2, you really should already have an upgraded coil pack, but I never got them until now. So phase 3, I went ahead and got the ALFA 4C coil packs. There's 4 of them. I'm just showing you 2. It'll just be smoother in a way, and they'll be able to hold the power that you're pushing. And I'd also recommend upgrading your spark plugs or getting new ones at least and gapping them to the right. But I already did that with phase 2. I did do that. And you're also going to need on Eurocompulsion's website, they sell it. It's the stock turbo replacement kit. So it's everything you need to install in your turbo. It's basically all the same stock stuff. And then you also get some dum-dums and some stickers from them. There's also no instructions anywhere on how to install any of this, so it's kind of just figure it out or know what you're doing, and then you can do it. But then when you buy the turbo, it also comes with all the hoses and oil return lines and feed lines that you need, clamps, and all the different ports you need. So that's everything you're going to need to get. Other than the Eurocompulsion tune, you are going to have to, if you have a Eurocompulsion tune already, phase 3 tune is a separate tune you have to purchase off them, just so you can get the actual phase 3 tune for your turbo. It's like $350. They'll send you the tune, and then you can go ahead and put it onto your flash box, and then load it onto your car after the turbo's installed. But yeah, that's everything you're gonna need. Also, you're gonna need coolant. You will need another thing of coolant. I went to Dodge and got myself some more coolant. Stock coolant that goes in the car. It was like $20 for the jug. Nothing too expensive, because you are going to have to drain your coolant out of your car, and you're going to have to get your AC discharged. I just went to a local automotive shop. It took me quite a few tries to find somebody that would do it, but you need to get your AC discharged, otherwise you're going to spit a bunch of Freon into your face, which is not good. So I'm going to go ahead and get the car up on some ramps now, get it jacked up, and start pulling the front end apart. Alright, so now since the front bumper's off, I'm going to go ahead and start taking apart everything right here so I can access the turbo. I'm going to start with the front mount intercooler. I'm going to go ahead and remove that with these 2 number 8s right there, and then disconnect the hosing, and then we'll work on the bash bar. Okay, I've gone ahead and pulled off the front mount intercooler and the bash bar. That just is 4 big bolts and 2 10s on each side, and then the bash bar comes out. Now I'm starting to try and find draining my coolant, and then from there I'll pull off the whole front clip. and we'll have access to the turbo and the downpipe very easily. Okay, so for me, I was struggling to find out where to drain the coolant from, but on the passenger side there's this hose right here. It's right on the side of the radiator. You come down, it's a big hose, and there's a little like kind of pinch clip right here. You just pop that down, and then it's a one-time use like clip that goes right here. And in the previous videos of me doing my front mount intercooler, I show you how to get them off. You have to take that off, and then you can pull the hose back and the coolant will start draining from there. Alright, well now all the coolant is drained. It comes out of this hose right here that you disconnected. I do recommend putting a towel around whatever you are draining it into, because it does seem to splatter quite a bit. Since it's hitting all these rails down here, it splatters a little bit. But we got it all done. Now I can start pulling off the actual front clip, which is going to be these two screws right here, or bolts. These two bolts, you're gonna have to pull, I think, a headlight bolt from down here off. Same on the other side, and then on either side there's these 4 bolts that are right here. You gotta pull those off, and then the front clip should disconnect, and then you'll have all your wires and hoses that you're gonna have to remove from there, and then the whole front end will pop off and you'll have a bunch of access. Alright, so pulling out the front clip, there's a few hidden bolts that I figured out that you need to disconnect. So like I said, there's the 2 up here that connect to the fender on either side. You're also gonna have to remove the 3 10s right here that hold in your hood latch. Pull the hood latch back and then disconnect the cable, because that's pulling it back, so you can't actually take it off. The number 10s down here for your headlight on both sides, and then your upper radiator hose, lower radiator hose, you're gonna have to remove. There's like a Torx socket that connects right here. You're gonna have to remove that. It's kind of a pain to get it if you don't have that socket, but I went ahead and figured something out. So I got that off, and then you're gonna wanna unplug. In here there's like a sensor. You have to unplug that, unplug your headlights, unplug all the plugs that are connected to the back of your radiator, unconnect all those, and then those 4 on the bottom that connect down there, those actually connect to the frame. So those are just 4 number, I believe, 15s. So pull those off, and then you should be able to pull the actual front clip off. Also, your horn, gonna have to disconnect that. Go ahead and do that, and then we can pull the front clip off. Alright, so I got the front clip off now, and you can see how much more room this actually gives you to get to the turbo, and it just looks like a mess. But here's the turbo. Downpipe, everything's right here, so it's going to be very easy when we start to actually put on the new turbo and take everything apart. Very easy to access. The next step is really to just start taking off all the little things like the intake, the turbo blanket, all the shields and all that fun stuff. And then it's really just replacing all the lines and slapping on the new guy. Alright, I'm just going to start taking off all this little accent stuff and the intake, engine cover, pull off all that so I can better see the turbo. And then we're going to have to pull off this diverter valve as well to relocate it. So it's just 3 Allens right here, boom, boom, boom. Pull that off, and then we'll reroute it somewhere else. Since I'm here at this step, because I'm going to wait for Trey to get off work to come help me with the turbo, because he knows way more about turbo work than me, and especially because he did his big turbo swap in his car, I'm going to go ahead and replace my stock coil packs with the ALFA 4C1s. These are super easy to do. It's just a number 10. Pop those off, and then unclip these clips. They pop out of their little sockets, and then you can slap in the new ones, and then you're good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and do that.
Alright, so finally got off work. Hopefully we're going to get this done in the next couple hours. It's pretty straightforward from here. We just have to remove all of the coolant and oil feed and return lines from the turbo. And then after we get that done, we can actually remove the manifold. And while the manifold's off, we'll be able to disconnect the turbo from the manifold flange. And then from that point, we're going to be able to mount the new turbo on and install the new gasket with the new heat shield. So, I mean, it's kind of convenient with this car. You can just take the whole front end apart, which isn't technically too hard if you have a second hand. Unfortunately, Damon, he was by himself. He did it by himself though, which is, I mean, it's doable, definitely doable. But it's very convenient to have this. But yeah, we're gonna get to disconnecting all of these lines, and then we'll get back to you guys when we are taking off the manifold. All right, so we got all the coolant and oil lines disconnected. There's going to be this little Torx right here on one of the coolant lines. That's going to be the line going towards the back of the turbo for the coolant. We removed that completely. Here's another coolant line right here that goes to this line over here towards the reservoir. Oil line from the top, and the return, oil return is right here. So all those are disconnected. I just disconnected the wastegate vacuum line here. And then down here, there's a vacuum line attached to the charge side of the turbo here, so you get the boost pressure. So now that everything's disconnected, we can actually remove the manifold with the turbo, and we'll be good to go from there. All right, so to get to all of the little nuts and studs in the back here that hold the manifold on, you have to take this shield off, which is actually, you know, kind of squished in here, and it's really hard to get out. You just have to kind of work with it and kind of move some of the lines out of the way to get the shield out. But we are one stud away from getting this thing off. And that's it right there. So that was the last one. One of the studs actually stayed in, but for the rest of them, they all kind of came out. All right. There we go.
Hey!
So from there, we just got to get these 4 nuts here, and then the turbo will come off, and then we can replace this gasket and put the new turbo on. So we'll get to that right now. All right, now that we got the old turbo off, it is over there. This is our new Garrett right here that we're gonna be slapping on here. There's a couple differences with this turbo setup than the other one. And they're very minor, but it's all to benefit from the better efficiency. But when you get your turbo, you're gonna wanna double check all of the bolt points. Just make sure everything's tight before you put it all together. That way, down the road, you don't run into any issues with things coming loose or anything like that. But now that we're at this point, we can put on the new gasket that comes with the kit, and then they give you new nuts and washers for mounting it to the manifold. All right, so now we're just gonna go ahead and mount this. Just put the washers on. Well, it's best just like while you have everything apart, just to, you know, give everything a good clean. We did kind of our best at cleaning the manifold surface here that mounts to the head, and then also where it mounts to the turbo. And what you want to do too is you know, clean off any of the oil feed or oil return or oil feed lines that are going to be used again, and then clean off the head surface where the manifold mates to the head. And we're going to pull this stud out right here. This is the only stud that stayed when we were taking the manifold off, and then it comes with replacement studs with replacement nuts as well. So we're going to be using all of the replacement parts. But from this point, you know, it's kind of just reassembly, and then where are they at? Over here. Reassembly of the new lines as well. This is a coolant line and this is your oil feed line. So we'll go into how those go onto the car once we get them onto the car. But for now, we're just going to tighten up the turbo to the manifold, get everything kind of fitted where we want it, and then figure out the lines from there. Alright, so what we're doing right now is we're installing the new studs. We have all of them started, but to actually get them to seat in the head, we're using this method of using 2 nuts. And basically what it's going to do It already kind of, when you start threading it onto it at first, it starts to thread in a little bit, but then it wants to stop because it reaches the point where this thread lock starts to actually grab. You want to get the nut on there, the first nut, and then take the second nut, run it up to it, and then take the ratchet, and eventually they'll meet, and there's nowhere else for that nut to go, so it'll start spinning the stud. What you don't want to do is risk, you know, stripping out the actual threads of the head, so you just got to be real careful. Alrighty, so this is pretty much how we have it all set up. All of these studs are ran in and to the proper you know, gapping here. They're all in that little flat spot that I showed you guys earlier. So for our feed, oil feed, it's going to come from right here, where the factory one was this fitting right here. It was a banjo fitting, but now it's replaced with this AN style fitting right here. It's all stainless and everything like that. It's kind of long, but at the same time, I mean, you can put it wherever you'd like. You know, you can zip tie it off to the side or make some sort of bracket to get it out of the way. But in reality, it's just going to go right to the top of the turbo right here. If you can envision the turbo, it's going to be mounted right on the top, and we can go and show you the turbo right now. This fitting right here came with the kit as well, and then this banjo fitting here with this stainless line is going to be one of the coolant lines, and that is supplied in the kit as well. And we still have to tighten this one. We're kind of using the play of this to an advantage, just to, you know, mock up all the fitment of everything for the coolant line and everything like that. And we also installed this fitting here that goes on the factory location for where the coolant feed is going to go, and that is going to connect to the line that we installed onto the turbo, this banjo fitting right here. And then we're retaining the factory lines for this coolant line right here, and then the oil return right here. So all those two are going to actually be the OEM hoses, which is this one right here. This is the oil return, and then this is your coolant line from the front side of the turbo. So those are going to stay, and then they give us new feed lines for coolant and oil both. So we're going to put the turbo on, kind of get an idea of where we're going to mount all of the lines and run all of them, and then we'll get back to you guys when we figure all that out. Alright, so we're at the point where we can actually mount the turbo and fasten it to the head. So we have the gasket that was supplied here, and it actually acts as a heat shield too. So this gasket right here is new. It's going to be for the oil return. And it literally just snaps on, just as the old one came off. Snaps on there. So make sure it's clean before you put it on, just like that. And now we got everything tight on here. All the fittings are tight. The banjo fitting's tight. And we're going to go ahead and put this on and see where we're going to route everything. So that's there. Okay. Alright, so it's been quite a while since the last update, just simply because when a company says, like, you know, oh, it's just bolt-on application, most of the time it's not, you know, bolt-on. So we've been kind of struggling with some fitment issues, this being one of them. We can't really route it any other direction to make it, you know, if we go back here, it's going to get in the way of the wastegate actuator. If we run it under here, it's going to start touching the manifold shield. So, like, our best bet right now is to just temporarily, maybe later down the road, we can get a shorter line. But for the meantime, we can run it just like this, and it'll be fine, as long as it's away from the hot side of the turbo. Now, for all this other stuff here, like this coolant line, there really was not a lot of options. The coolant line goes to the back of the turbo right back here. That's where that banjo was that we showed earlier. This one was a little strange. This is the front coolant line right here, and then there's this plug on the front side of the turbo, and it slightly gets in the way of this hard line here, but if you manage to actually get this tight enough, it will seat, and it, with the wheel, the banjo bolt will seal on these washers here. So that was an issue. Also, one very huge issue that we had to literally force to fit was this oil return line here. We ended up actually disconnecting this banjo bolt right here, and then there's a little Torx bit down on the bottom that connects the feed to the actual base of the engine where the pan is. And once we disconnected those, we were able to actually line up both of these bolts here to the bottom of the turbo, just because the fitment was really bad. But once we got these started, we managed to push up on this entire line here and fit this back in to the block, and then fit this bolt back into its place. And we had to loosen this one right here. This is going to be a coolant line, so when you loosen this, coolant is going to come out of it, as you see here. So the coolant's going to come out. You're going to need to shimmy this to get this to fit up here, and then once you get those bolts started, you can come back down here, fit everything into place with the oil return, and then bolt this coolant back up, that coolant line. So all of the manifold bolts were tightened before this shield was on, and that's why we had to take this off. And the reason why it was difficult to put this on was because when you tighten all of the nuts here for the manifold, the fitment isn't right. So we made it work, we made it fit, so that's what we're going with there. Now this is our bypass valve setup. Yeah, this is a little bit confusing. I mean, it's actually kind of confusing, but hopefully when you get your hands on it, you can kind of get a better understanding. But this is the system that we were given using this turbo setup. It's this this nipple that comes off of the actual turbine housing, or the compressor housing, my bad. And you have to buy a 1-inch inner diameter hose, and then 2 clamps right here to mate to this actual bypass valve bracket here. So this is actually going to be your new bypass valve location. You can put it anywhere you have space, but knowing this car, you won't have
not a lot of space.
So this is where we decided to mount it. I mean, it's not the prettiest setup here, but we're just trying to get everything to work properly. So we zip tied it to these little hard lines here. This is going to be the one of the lines that goes to the intake here. And then this, we actually cut a new vacuum line for the wastegate. So I don't know where the other piece is. So yeah, we replaced this little 90-degree elbow here with this longer piece, just because it's going to have to travel longer to get to the actual wastegate actuator. So yeah, I mean, if you're going to need extra hose to do this, to extend the bypass valve lines, all that stuff. So just make sure you do have the extra hose that you need to actually get this task done. And one thing to mention too about this this bypass valve mounting point here is this used to be an open threaded hole. When you get the kit, you'll have this triangular shaped piece, which is where the bypass valve will go to, and then there's going to be a threaded hole right here. Now, if you can find a plug that you can put in there, but we actually went to one of the local Apocalypse Racing, one of the local tuner shops here, and they actually used a treatment where, what is it called?
I don't know what it's called, but it's good for 900 psi.
So you can imagine this is definitely going to do the job. It's a composite, it's not a metal, so it took some time to cure, a couple days. Well, he said it took like 4 hours, but yeah, we would just did 2 days just to make it to be sure we're safe with it. But yeah, if you're gonna do this, you're gonna need a way to block that off, unless
you're venting to atmosphere.
Unless you're venting to atmosphere, then you can
with like a real blow off.
Yeah, exactly. But this is just the bypass valve, so it's just gonna be going back into the system. So this is our setup right now. We managed to get the charge pipe on here. All of the lines, coolant and oil, are ram. At this point, we're good to start putting everything back together and get this bumper back on, get the radiator, the condenser for the AC, and the intercooler back on the car. So yeah, we'll start assembling everything again, and hopefully we'll see you guys soon. Don't do it. I'm tired.
Okay, so since the last little, I put the intake on and the downpipe on, got everything ready because we're gonna go ahead and throw on the front clip right now. It's gonna be a little bit of a pain because there's some connections to connect before you really can set it in. And then I can drop the 2 top screws in and then start finagling everything else, and then we're there.
It looks so crazy though.
That looks whack right now. Yeah, I'm just gonna run it like that.
This is all of its humor.
Too close to.
Alright, so we haven't gotten the bumper on yet just because we're going to start it right now and see if we can find any possible leaks or anything like that in the entire system. But we went ahead and, well, Damon went ahead and got some coolant from Dodge, which is, you know, the supplier of everything for this car. So this coolant is the concentrated kind, so you do have to mix it 50-50. So what we did here, it's slower, but you know, it's working. We're going by ounces here, so I filled it up to 8 ounces and then filled it up with distilled water to 16 ounces. That way it's a perfect 50-50 blend. But I went ahead and just kept pouring it into the expansion tank right here. And right now we're at the max, so we're going to start the car, see how much it drops, if it is going to drop. So we're just going to kind of keep track of where it is and make sure that it never goes below the minimum. So yeah, we're pretty much ready to start it and see if there's any leaks or anything like that. We got everything buttoned up. We made sure that all the lines are in a good spot. They're not going to get, they're not going to be like interfered with anything externally of the car. Everything's pretty much back together. New coil packs are in, new turbo is in, so yeah, we're ready to start her up. We should definitely check the level of the oil too, just because some did leak out. But
Yeah.
yeah, we'll do that right now, and then we'll actually start the car and monitor the cooling system. So, yeah.
Okay, so when you last saw it was dark outside. Everything was put back together. We had the front clip on. We did the first startup. I got the tune on the car, and then we noticed that I had 2 leaks. And one from the coolant return line and the other one from the oil return line on the bottom of the turbo. So with the front clip on and all the coolant in, there's not really a way to access the oil return line unless you pull the front clip off again. So we tried everything we could, but it just started leaking more. We got the coolant one fixed. Now we just had to tighten it down a little bit more. But the oil return line, so early this morning, I was up till like 3 a.m. popping off the front clip again and redraining the coolant. And then getting it ready so we can, today, when Eddie came by, assess the situation. So what had happened was the oil return line, for one, the flange, it's supposed to be flat, and mine was kind of at a curve. It had a good bend in it, so it wasn't sealing right. And secondly, one of the screws to go to the bottom of it was bent. So there was no seal at all going on there. So we had to pull that off. We got it flattened out. We put some kind of sealant on it, like a gasket, almost like a liquid gasket, and then the metal one, and then a little bit more sealant, very thin layers, and put it back on. We just took it for a test drive, and we have no leaks, so it's a success. Everything's back to normal. We gotta refill the coolant once the car cools down a little bit, but when you're doing this, I just can't really stress enough to check everything, make sure everything's sealed to your eye, that you can see everything's tight, because you put it on and that's the only way you're gonna find out if you have leaks, is once it's all pretty much back together. But we're gonna do another drive. We're gonna take you guys with us so you can hear the new noises it makes and all the new fun stuff. But yeah, it was a long night getting it complete. Started at what, like 8 in the morning yesterday and just now finished. And it was almost...
Oh, you started at 8?
Yeah, I started at 8 in the morning yesterday, and it basically took us that whole time. But pretty much just because of those issues. So yeah, we're gonna go for a drive and then see what else happens. Howdy! Okay, let me break the boost brake. Alright.
So that was
Phase 3 is on right
Phase
now.
3's on.
Yeah. We're gonna drop it in a second and then... Oh my god. Alright, so we walked you through everything we did with this car, putting the turbo in. We showed you what it sounds like, kind of what it does, my little short reaction to it, because it's not really a cool place to do a poll for you guys, sadly. But you'll all see it if you guys are in California and doing Fiat on the Snake. I'll be there. You'll be able to check out the car there. Also, in the video you noticed, probably while we were working on it, I had white doors and my car looked a little whack. We weren't done with the wrap, but it's all finished now. So it's on my Instagram if you want to check that out. But overall, if you want to do the turbo upgrade, I would highly recommend it. If you don't think you can do it yourself, I know 500 Madness will install it for you. If you buy everything for it, you can take your car to them and they'll do it. Or just get a cool group of friends that kind of know what they're doing and watch this video. And you can kind of see how we did it and just take your time, make sure everything's perfect and you won't have a problem. But I'd have to say it totally changed the feeling of the car for me. I've been driving it around for a good week now, probably, right? Yeah, probably a good week now, and it's a game changer. The car's just totally different. I'm very excited to go take this out on a track. I know there's talk about doing one in December through SoCal Abarth Club. So I'm stoked to see how it's going to perform. I feel like it's going to be a huge difference. I mean, the lag, it's not as bad as everybody might think it is. It's like 500 RPM later to hit boost, so it's not going to be a huge, like,
it's not going to be a huge
what I mean?
drag.
It's not going to be a
It's
huge
still
drag.
going to
Yeah,
be
it's
efficient.
going to be, yeah. So, I mean, I feel like it's probably going to be a very big difference on the track, just getting up to speed and all that fun stuff. But
and it's going to be cold.
And it's going to be cold for the track day because it's supposed to be in December. So, if we do it, you'll be there. Obviously, we're going to be filming it, so it'll be the first like track day in the new shakedown. We'll do a shakedown video. That'll be how it is. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. If you want to subscribe, please do that. That'd be perfect for us. You can follow us on Instagram. Everything's in the description. The kits for all the turbo stuff, I'll be sure to put in the description as well. Yeah, thank you for watching. Really appreciate it.